All right, welcome. My name's Chance Hunt. I'm the product line manager over at LTI. And today we're going to be talking about a couple of different products. One, we're going to talk about hot wells, and then we're going to get into hot cold technology. So there's two basic kind of hot wells that are out in the marketplace when you're talking about drop-in hot wells, and that's either your individual well or your bain-marie style well. Today we're really going to be focused in on that individual well. Lots of different ways to do wells in the marketplace, right? There's all these different competitors out there that have lots of different ways and manufacturing ways of putting these wells together. We're going to talk about some of the heat technology that is used in the marketplace. So what you most commonly see is you see this style, this Kelrod element. And that Kelrod element basically is just creates heat off of that element. So those are usually located underneath the pan, and then it projects the heat up. There's usually an insulated box either underneath of them, or they're right encased in the insulated box. Sometimes you'll see them like this. This is a dry only unit where it has a fan and it has that Kelrod heat style element in there also. Up here you have a rope style heater. This is a heater that could either be wrapped in like foil or along the bottom of a pan or on sidewalls of a pan. This is induction style. You don't see this very much in the marketplace because you have to use special kinds of pans with these that are magnetic. And depending on the amount of magnetic properties, depends on how the pan works. Plus there's only a 2-slot opening on the top. So your smallest pan you can use because of the technology is 2 half-size pans. And then there's silicon pad technology. Here's 2 different styles of units too. You kind of got the wet or the wet-dry operation. So this one is, these are all units that would come with plumb drains on them, and they can be either operational on the wet side of it only or a wet-dry style operation, but they are all plumbed. Different ways of getting water into those. You can either have a auto water fill that is built into the unit. You can have a fill faucet that is built onto the side of the unit, or you could have one that was built underneath the unit that you pull out and fill water in with, or you can just manually fill the water on the unit. And then the other style is a dry only style unit. So these dry only style, multiple different ways of doing that. Here's one with just an element in the bottom of the pan, an exposed element, and then you put a pan up above the top of it. This is that induction style where they have the 2 different levels and the 2 buttons on that make contact to the bottom of the pan. This is a foil-based rope heat along the bottom edge of the pan. This has a fan assembly similar to this one down here. And this is a element that just has a shield over the top of it. So several different ways to do a dry only. And most dry only and that have any kind of fan operation or anything, you wouldn't want to use water in there at all. Even when you're cleaning up, you'd want to be careful because of the fan and the Kelrod element that is down underneath the base of the unit. So now we're going to talk a little bit about LTI and what we do on our units. And then we're going to get into some testing after that. So low wattage heating pads. So it is a very low wattage heating pad that runs along the base of the unit and along the sidewalls on the thermal well unit. And then these are do have the ability to be dry only wells. And we have a separate product line that is listed as dry only wells. They all come with a digital control on them. There's a thermostatic temperature reading. So instead of like a rheostat, which only is more power, less power, this measures actual temperature of the heating pad. So that way you're getting the actual temperature circulation. So it goes on and off with the temperature. They are available in wet dry. They do have a 14 gauge top. And then the 2-year parts and labor, that's the best in class warranty out there. That's our standard warranty on that product. So that's 2 years parts and labor. This next slide is getting into some testing that we've done. We tested, we wanted to find out with our dry wells with having the heat on the bottom and on the sides of the unit versus what a wet application would be with the heat only on the bottom, and then also with a dry application with heat only on the bottom. We also wanted to test against two competitor units. This is just kind of what we did initially for our testing setup. So we were testing not only power on them, but we ended up testing food. Then I'm going to show you some results of what these tests were. So with the overall testing, the NSF, they both passed the testing just fine. The food holding test, both of them passed the temperatures on the food. One of the major things was the difference when you started to look at them. So this is the wet pan here on the side, and this is the dry with the bottom heat and the sidewall heat. So we had gravy and mashed potatoes and mac and cheese in there in each one of these examples. We also did the NSF with the NSF medium, which is a solution of sawdust and oil mixture that you put in the pan. And this is what we came up with on the cost savings from just switching from a wet operation to a dry operation. Now this is already at a very low wattage. We're talking about 563 amps total that the heating pad on this takes up. Most cow rods start anywhere from 1100 or 1000 and go up to 1100, usually 1200, sometimes even up to 15. So this is very low cost when it comes to it. And there is already a cost savings just by not using the water. And this doesn't factor in anything to do with the handling of the water or the extra cost of hooking up the unit with the plumbing. And you can see here by the product, it came out nice. Here's an actual picture of all the products in there. So this one was the dry on the bottom heat. Then you had the bottom and the sidewall heat, and then this was the wet. We also put these up against some competitive units to see how they test out as far as the power samples, and then also the same thing with the food testing. So here's some of the results that you see here against competitor A. We were able to have a cost savings in there about $26 per well. Against competitor B, this one used a lot more energy, and we're able to save almost $100 per well each year. And then this is the example. These are the different units and what the food looked like. So this was competitor A. Here's us. And then this was competitor B. So this is how we stack up against the competition, and we can make this this information available to you. And these are all the different competitor model numbers going down through there, and then the different items along the top of it. We not only have this for our dry units, but we have it for the dry wet ones also. So now I'm going to jump into the next category here, and this is the hot cold wells. So there's many different ways to be able to heat these units. One of the most common ones is an immersion style element. So that's an element that you see at the top of the screen. That's one that you'd see in like a hot water heater in your house. And so this element needs water above it at all times. So when you are going to use this unit, most likely you're going to end up having an auto water fill that is required with the unit too. Here's another example. You can see there's that induction element. And here on the side is the auto water fill. This also adds to the cleaning of the unit because now you have these grates and stuff that are over the top of that. And because you have water in the units all the time, of course, there's a little more scrubbing that goes on the sides of the unit. This is actually a different style that has a hydro heater on it, and you can see there's multiple different steps for being able to clean this one. Okay, these are just some of the different methods for heating. Again, one of the most common methods on this style unit is where you're using your cow rod elements. Your rope heater that just flashed up on the top, this is used on just one brand out in the marketplace. Use that rope heater. Those Calrod elements, those are used on multiple brands. And then there's the hydro heater. I mentioned that just a second ago with all those parts, parts that came off there. And then last is the silicon type pad. This is what we use at LTI. And this is how these units are cooled. So there's multiple different ways for cooling on them. The most common way and the most common method for cooling out in the marketplace is wrapped refrigeration lines. So there's wrapped lines that go around the outside body of the unit, and those refrigeration lines are sometimes just in contact with the stainless steel. Sometimes they have little clamps over the top of them. There's multiple different ways of adhering them to the outside body of the unit to be able to transfer that cold. And most of them, what you see is they're all recessed down into the cavity, anywhere from 2 inches to 3 inches, and that's to be able to maintain and hold the temperature. This is just another version of a recessed style pan. LTI, what we do different is our pans are actually flush around the unit. The reason why this technology works for us to be able to have flush pans versus the competition is a couple of things. One of them has to do with we have individual pans. So our hot cold unit has individual wells instead of one big wide open well that is either all hot or cold. So that means that every 12 by 20 pan section has 4 walls all the way around it. So you have closer proximity. And then because of how we transfer the cold through those walls and what we do in putting aluminum plates on there, because of that transfer of that cold, we're able to get a very even temperature all the way around that pan and that unit. So even that we're able to actually flip it into a freeze mode and hold products at a frozen temperature. Here's just some of the other features and benefits of that quick switch. So I just mentioned that frozen mode. So you have frozen, cold, or hot. Each one of those wells are controlled separately. So each one is basically its own insulated little cavity that can be hot, cold, or frozen separate from any one of the other wells. Has all sealed drains underneath every one of the wells. They all come to a common point that leaves just one area to be able to pump to, or one connection, excuse me. The wells will work in a wet or a dry mode. In the flange style, you can have 2 different styles of flange. So you could have that 90-degree turn down, or you could have a hugged edge, which makes it so it has just a smaller edge around it in the lower profile. Sometimes is just a more appealing look, depending on what you're mounting in your counters. Adjustable compressor frame, you can see the holes along the side here. This frame actually moves up and down so the weight can be supported off of the base of the unit and not all off the top edge. Although the top is all 14 gauge, so it can take the weight to support it that way. This just gives flexibility and it makes it easier to take up unwanted space underneath there anyways. 200 series stainless steel all the way around the unit, so that makes it for a nice solid unit all the way around, and you're less apt to rust. And then 2 years parts and labor and a 5-year compressor warranty on every one of the units that shipped out. And this is the heating pad. I won't get into all the details on the heating pad, but basically you have 3 different heat temperatures for wet and 3 for dry, and then you have your cool, you have 3 temperatures, and then you have the ice cream mode or the frozen mode. This is that flush pan technology that I talked about before. So each one of those is flush. Makes it easier for the merchandising. There's the sealed wells, the pictures of it, and you can see there's that single connection point. There's already a pre-drilled hole in the base of it, so it makes it easy to plumb up to the unit, and then you can have water in any one of the wells or none of them, depending on what your preference is. And you can also use those for cleaning out the well at the end of the night, when not with food debris, but with the frost that comes off the sides of the unit. And this is how we stack up against the competition. There's the sheets available also. Open well design. This is what you mainly see in the marketplace, is an open well design. So it's either all hot or all cold. So if you have a 4-well unit, it's not 4 individual wells. It is just all hot, all cold. So here's the Duke style unit. You can see with the recessed pans down in here, and then this is all hot, all cold, from 2 pans up to 6 pan. Pans are recessed 3 inches below the top. They do use immersion elements, and then it does have a fixed frame. So you can see a little bit of the differences. Here's the inside difference. That's where those immersion elements are, down underneath the base of the unit. Here's the Hatco unit. And so the Hatco unit, this is the one that has the booster heater on the bottom of it, and does require an auto water fill. Just some of those parts that they have in here, they're required, versus nice clean interior. See here again, just some of the extra work that goes into it, versus just pouring a little bit of water in there. You can see there's no frame all the way around the unit, so you got to be careful on that side of it, versus that framework that's all the way around the base of our unit, and that adjustability. It's a Delfield style unit. Again, this is a one all hot or all cold. Just with the interior, there's their immersion heater on the interior of the unit. You see it here on the drawing too, versus the heat pad that's underneath the base of our unit. Just underneath this shield right here, and easy to come off and on, but not touching the water in any way. This is just taking a look at some of the electrical differences that you run into also. So here's an example of LTI unit, the Delfield unit. And the difference in power just for that 2 well is 2.3 amps or 12.3 amps less. Really ends up making a difference on a cord and plug. So if you look at it here versus here, this is something that you can see in a standard kitchen just about everywhere has 20 amp cord and plugs, even houses. And that's, you can plug in a 2 well unit that easy versus this. This is an example how the water, how they're using the auto water fill. This is a float style. So you can see the float here is on the outside edge of the unit, and what the float does is there's that little bobber that's on the inside of it. And you can see this line right here, and it ends up equalizing from the water that comes back, flows back and forth in between here. So this does make for more of a counter cutout, because now you have to allow for the space, or not more of a counter cutout, but at least more space on the side of the unit. So you can be able to allow for having this unit underneath there. And then it should be accessible, just because anytime you have any kind of float style unit or water or anything like that, you should make it easy to get to, so in case of any kind of repairs. Here's the well style unit. This is thermostatic digital control, immersion element on the unit. You can see down here, you need a little more cost for the same warranty that comes standard on the LTI unit. Here's the immersion style heater in the base of the unit. And then this is just the controls, how they're different. So you have your refrigerated control mounted down in the base. It just has cold. It doesn't have different set temperatures for the cold unless you adjust in the base. And then it just has the hot with a digital dial. Auto water fill element, immersion element. It's an Atlas style unit, 3-inch recess immersion element. You can see where theirs is sitting in the unit. They do have the auto water fill as optional, but you have to make sure it's managed and you have water over the top of it at all times. So it is that same 2-stage hot cold elements down along the bottom of the unit. And the cold has to be used with ice on it. So this is one that has not been labeled. And this is right out of their own owner's manual. It's not been labeled to be able to be used with hazardous food without being used ice on the inside of it. And then for the hot side of it is just the water again with that immersion style, or with that element in the base of it. So this has a Calrod style element that you can see along the base of the unit, and the refrigeration lines wrapped around the outside edge of it. This is the Randall Style unit. This is just a 2-stage, again, hot or cold, 1100 watt elements along the bottom of it, and with the perforation you put a 4-inch deep pan in it. You can see here, if you take the perforation out of the unit, or if you're using hot pans, which you should have the perforation in there, you'll only be able to put a 4-inch deep pan in there. And then I'm going to talk about the manufacturer that does have listed on their website out in the marketplace is a 4-well that does have individual wells, and that's Vollrath. So they do have individual wells, although when you get up to a compressor style unit, when you get up to 2 compressors or 4 wells, you do have 2 compressors on the base of the unit. These do have rope heaters, 625 watts versus the 500 watt silicon heating pad that is on the base of the LTI unit. They also have, and I don't know a whole bunch about this, an auto drain or drain plug with the unit, because it is a wet operation only. It does not have dry operation, so I'm not sure how exactly this works. But it is required because the unit does need to be run with water when you're in the hot mode. Well, if you do think of something, or if you do have a follow-up thing that you have any questions about on those products, feel free to get a hold of me. And you can get a hold of me through Eaton. So just get a hold of them, and we can make contact from there. Thank you very much for your time today, and hope that everyone stays safe and enjoys the time with family, even if they're teenage kids.
Thank you very much for putting this together, and just to let everybody know, tomorrow we will have Middleby Marshall going through, I believe, their WOW oven. So I appreciate it, and thanks a lot for all your hard work, Chance.